You're all very welcome. My name is Emma Loughney. I'm the Communications Manager with the Fulbright Commission in Ireland. We're delighted to chat to you, the CSU network, today. As you're likely aware, the 2023-2024 Fulbright U.S. Scholar Competition is now open for applications. And we at the Fulbright Commission in Ireland invite passionate U.S. scholars and professionals to apply for research and teaching scholarships. These awards are open to all US citizens and nationals. We strive to ensure that our programs reflect and value the diversity of Irish and US societies, and equity steps to support this intent include the provision of online interviews and for shortlisted candidates and assessment beyond academic aspects. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sonia shortly, and she'll give you an overview of the Irish Awards and opportunities to come to Ireland. I just want to share a few shots here with you that our previous US awardees have taken to give you an idea of Ireland and the landscape. Some of our awardees here with family, visiting cultural sites. There are 9 universities in Ireland, and then also 9 institutes of technology, which have now been amalgamated for the most part into technological universities. And there are a number of other institutions as well. So this is just one of them. This is one of our speakers today, Melissa, on her recent visit to Dublin. And here are a few more of our institutions around the country. Before I ask Sonia to speak about the awards, I'll just tell you a little bit about our alumni contributors today. Dr. Melissa Hidalgo currently teaches classes in ethnic studies and women's and gender studies at California State University Fullerton and CSU Long Beach. She is also a senior writer at the James Beard award-winning food and cultural site based in Los Angeles, LA Taco. She was a Fulbright U.S. scholar to the University of Limerick in 2016. Thank you, Melissa, for helping to organize this event for the CSU network. And also thank you to Carl Friels from the Office of Research and Development at CSU Long Beach, who has helped as well. We have Professor Lonnie Simonian with us today as well. He's an instructor in the College of Architecture and Environmental Design at Cal Poly. He is a licensed professional electrical engineer in the state of California and a Project Management Institute certified project management professional. He was a Fulbright U.S. scholar to Technological University Dublin in 2019. So we really look forward to hearing from our alum speakers shortly. If you have any questions, please put them in our chat box. So at any stage, you can pop those questions into the chat box and we'll try to get to them back to you throughout the session. So if you have questions during Sonia's presentation or while I'm chatting with Melissa and Lonnie, just type away, please. So now I'd like to introduce my colleague Sonia McGuinness, and she'll give an overview of Ireland in general and of the Fulbright program opportunities here.
Hi, everyone. Great to have you on the call. So I'm the Senior Awards Manager. I look after the US Scholar Program and the Irish Scholar Program. So I'm going to give you a bit of a background to Ireland and then talk about the awards. So why Ireland? Ireland is a friendly, engaging and vibrant country with centuries of US interaction. We have a highly educated workforce, a competitive educational system and a millennia of culture. It is a popular choice for US Fulbright applicants, particularly in our all disciplines category, which is generally oversubscribed. But we have also a number of sponsored awards that are undersubscribed. So it's definitely worth looking at the awards catalogue for those co-sponsored awards that we have. Previous Fulbright awardees from the US have said that they chosen Ireland because they found it extremely friendly, family-friendly, safe, culturally rich and diverse and accessible. Higher education in Ireland is provided by 9 universities, and until recently, there were 9 institutes of technology. But these institutes have now recently been amalgamated into technological universities. And we have also several colleges of education around the country. There's also a significant number of well-funded research centres. Most higher educational institutions in Ireland are supported by the government. For example, universities in Ireland are funded by up to 90% of their income. They receive 90% of their income from the Irish state. The Irish government has also invested heavily in research centres, with over 2.5 billion being utilised in the next number of years. Ireland is a small country. It's easy to get around. So therefore, we're able to support US awardees around Ireland. We bring them together for a number of events throughout their time here as Fulbrighters. It also means that you can build your own Fulbright family and community with your current awardees, and also with the wider Fulbright alumni network. Also, just for context, COVID in Ireland, at the moment, we were a very compliant country. So over, I'd say 94% of the population is fully vaccinated. Since the beginning of March, we've dropped all restrictions with regard to mask wearing in public settings, etc. So generally it's got back to normal. COVID is still here, but at a very small number compared to the last 2 years. So that's just to give you some context. Emma, can you just, I'm going to move on to my slides now. I just open.
Can you see the slides here?
I can indeed, yeah. So just to give you the timeline for applying for a US scholar to Ireland. So the awards opened in February, applications are open, and you can go on to the CIS.org website to register your intent to apply. The applications close in September 22. Reviews take place between September and December 2022. And then we have interviews between January and February 2022. And we offer the awards. I've literally offered the awards this year to our US cohort for 22-23. Now, between September and December, the technical review is done in the US. So our US colleagues undertake a technical review. So once that technical review is completed, we receive the recommended candidates who were recommended for a Fulbright to Ireland, generally in late November, early December 2022. And then they're reviewed. And at that stage, we consider if we're going to interview the candidates, and we will be in contact in January 23 to confirm if there are interviews, etc. Okay, so planning. Review the information on the CIS website. That's your first port of call, because the US Scholar Program, it is administered by our colleagues in the US. Choose an award that's right for you through the online catalogue. Plan a proposal and contact a host. Vital. Decide what you want to do, where you want to go in Ireland, and make contact with that institution and academics at that institution. Research what it means to be a Fulbrighter. This is a vital part of your application, and it's something that we look for all the time. So I suppose as a funding mechanism, it's kind of unique Fulbright, because we're not just looking at the academic aspect of your application, we're also looking at the personal aspect of your application. So who you are, what you can bring to Ireland on your Fulbright, not just in the premise of your research, but also you as a person, what you're going to do when you're in Fulbright, how you're going to get involved in the community, what are you going to learn here, and what those experiences that you're going to bring back to the US. So that's a vital part of your application. Okay, so if we go to the next slide, Emma. So application materials that you need to prepare: a project statement, a CV resume, letters of recommendation, short essays, bibliography, syllabi. Now, again, if it's a professional research-based project, there might be some flexibility in those requirements. Again, you can contact CIS for more information on that. Letter of invitation from an Irish host institution, language proficiency, it depends, and a portfolio for people applying in the arts disciplines. Okay, so Fulbright, the All Discipline Awards. As I said, these are oversubscribed every year. We have a number of people applying for the All Disciplines Awards. So they're either in teaching research, or a professional project. So finding a host. So I suppose this is the one question that I get a lot of queries from US scholars, potential US scholars applying, is how do I find this is what I want to do, where should I go? Or they send me their CV. And I'm like, I'm not an expert in every field. I can guide you, but really part of the process and the cultural process is that you find your own host here in Ireland. As I said before, we're a small country. There's only 9 universities, 9 institutes of technology. So it's looking for experts in your field. Think about the conferences that you've attended, the organizations you're involved with, other academics in your institution that might have studied or researched in Ireland. That's where you should be looking at. Also, another place would be Fulbright alum. If you look on our website, there are loads of alum going back a number of years, either the Irish alum or the US alum. And you'll see their biographies, so you'll know what their area is. So it's definitely a place of trying to connect with institutions through alum. And I'm happy to forward on any emails that you might want. And then consider institutions. The ITs, we generally get a lot more people or a lot more scholars applying to the universities as opposed to the ITs, but we want to see more diversity in that, and we want to see more people applying to the ITs. And also we like to see academics coming from community colleges in the US. That's, again, institutional diversity. So the sponsored awards, we have a number of sponsored awards. So sponsored awards would be co-sponsored by the Irish institution, and these can be found on the CIS catalogue. And again, if you tab through, when you look up an award and you tab through, the host has a contact, and that host contact is your first port of call. You know, if you come to me and say, this is my area in astrophysics. Again, I'm not an expert, so you need to contact DIAS, which is the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, and you need to contact that host and say, listen, this is my research area. This is your award. Are we a good fit? Would you be able to supply me with a letter of affiliation? So that's your first port of call. Again, if you don't get much feedback or you feel that you haven't got a response, please let me know. But I suppose another thing to take into consideration is we might be slower at getting back. That's just a cultural thing. That's an Irish thing. You know, things are slightly slower paced here. So just give them a bit of time. But it's definitely worthwhile reaching out to the host for the sponsored awards in the first instance to see if your research or your area of expertise matches with their award and get a feel for what they're looking for. So as you can see, we have sponsored awards at DIAS, which is Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, Letterkenny Institute of Technology, GSI, which is the Geological Survey Ireland, Amber, which is based at Trinity College Dublin, RCSI, which is the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and University College Dublin, which is Business UCC, and Dublin City University. So there's a multitude of co-sponsored awards, and it's all about you looking at the awards online on the catalogue, checking out the host and making contact with them if you think that you would be suitable for their award. So that's just a few more. As you can see, we have a number. And also, yeah, so there's also the quantitative research methods in TU Dublin. Like that people from any academic discipline are applying to that award. Is a really interesting award. So definitely, please take a look at the awards catalogue and the host contact and reach out. Okay, next step. So you need to review your eligibility criteria on Fulbright.ie or CIS.org. You register your interest on CIS.org, and they send you loads of information when you make that initial registration. You can check out our videos on Fulbright Ireland, or you can reach out to the Irish institutions for a letter of invitation. Again, seek out people in your institution that will have researched or attended or know Irish academics. I can guarantee there are people. Or look at our website and look at our US and our Irish alum and see where they went. And then that's a really good start. Or look at Irish institutions, look at the websites, look at the departments, look at the department heads, and reach out to them about a potential affiliation with their institution. So it's about, that's the kind of cultural element of you being proactive as a person and putting yourself outside the box and putting yourself forward for an award here in Ireland.
Great. Thank you very much, Sonia. So I'll just stop sharing the presentation now, so you should be able to see all of us. I was trying to, also running the presentation, but also trying to answer questions in the chat box. Probably a little bit busy, but there was a couple of questions. Firstly, apologies. Yes, the interviews will take place in January 2023. So that was a typo. So thank you for drawing that to our attention. And then some people had asked, were there scholars in country? Sonia, how many scholars are in country at the moment?
I have deferrals, so there's a big cohort. So at the moment we have 19 scholars, but for the academic year 22-23, we're going to have 18 scholars that are the 22-23. But at the moment, due to COVID, there's a lot of scholars in country at the moment. But yeah, for this, the successful US scholars for 22-23, it's 18 scholars coming.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Sonia. So now I'm going to ask maybe Melissa, if you wouldn't mind sharing your presentation and go through your slides, talk a little bit about your Fulbright project, and then Lonnie will do the same, and we'll have a chat.
Okay, thank you, Emma.
Okay.
So there's mine. Can everybody see everything okay?
Yeah, looks good. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invite, and I'm glad to have been able to help you organize this for the Cal State, so it's great. I have a few slides to share with you about the project I did there at the University of Limerick. So there I am. So my project, I was there at the University of Limerick from September 2016 to March 2017. And I found that host in an unusual way. So I can answer questions about that. But I'll say that it had everything to do with Twitter, and it had everything to do with happening to hear the professor who then would have been my host and who would have written the letter of invitation. I heard him on a radio show about Morrissey and Morrissey fans, talking about his research on Chicano literature. And here is this man from Ireland, from Limerick, talking exactly about the research I was about to propose. And so that's how I found my colleagues at the University of Limerick. But I landed there primarily to work on this book. So this was my big project. This was my big application. I actually applied once before, I didn't get it. So I applied the second time. I had a stronger file because I had a better sense of this book and project. And in the interim, I had already then worked with Professor Owen Devereaux, who was my head sort of contact at UL. The two of us in the interim had co-authored an article together on this piece. They had invited me to UL to do a keynote on this piece. So all of that kind of helped strengthen my application, I believe, for the successful second application, the second time around. But my book is the kind of, this was the project that came out of this. And the book is called Moslandia, Morrissey Fans in the Borderlands. And it was published in 2016 by a small independent press based in London. And this book, I can't believe it's 5 years old now. And Morrissey is definitely in a different relationship with some of his fans at this point, given some of his pronunciations about Brexit, etc. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this incredible subculture of fandom existed, continues to exist in some ways. And it was a study of cross-cultural fandom. And the reason why I went to Ireland is because the colleagues who I went with, and this speaks to what Sonia and Emma were saying about really finding people who do the same work as you, who are similar. The colleagues at Ireland in 2011 had just published an anthology of scholarly Morrissey essays. So that was the other thing that was just, a perfect fit. They were already doing this work in their programs. They have a pop culture studies center that they developed. And so it really was it ended up being a really great fit as far as the mutuality and the kinds of projects that they were doing there at UL and the project that I proposed to do with the Fulbright. So I completed that book there. This is just an example of one of the talks I gave. I gave several talks. So unlike some of the scholars who were actually there to teach classes, I didn't do any teaching. It was purely a research visit for me, a research program for me. But I did a lot of guest lectures and a lot of teaching in the form of seminars. And I did maybe about 7 or 8 of them when I was there in the 6 months I was there. So about once a month, I was talking to different classrooms, both at Maynooth University with a colleague there, as well as colleagues in and around Limerick, and at UCC, University College Cork, are some of the places I presented my research when I was there. Along with the Morrissey stuff, it sort of goes beyond Morrissey at this point to looking at larger cultural connections between Mexico, Ireland, Mexican Americans, Chicanos in the US, Irish people both there and in diaspora. And these are some of the points of reference that I'm actually still working on now. So the nice thing is that the Morrissey project is sort of done and over with, given that the book is out and there, but it also helped to plant some seeds for some further work that I would like to continue to pursue, particularly around other kinds of music and collaborations. This is an example of the Chieftains collaborating with Mexican and Irish artists and Mexican American artists to commemorate the San Patricios. While I was there, I also found that there were actually a Mariachi San Patricio in Dublin that really became part of my research and that I continue to always think about as far as this bigger, larger kind of a sense of culture and cultural connections between the US and Mexico and Ireland through music. When I was there, I happened to have seen Mariachi San Patricio open when Centra, which is like a convenience store, opened up like a Mexican fast food bar, I guess. They had tacos and burritos there, and the mariachis were there playing to celebrate. And these were put together by the then ambassador, whose name was Carlos Garcia de Alba. He actually put together the mariachi group to help promote these cultural connections. With Patty Maloney there, rest in peace, who just passed away very recently, was the head of the Chieftains, the band that I referenced in a previous slide. So when I was there, I continued every time I saw anything related to tacos, Mexican food, Mexican imagery at barbershops, because that's where it also happened. I documented that, and this is now a project that I think that is going to be something that I'll get to develop, or that I'm working on, thinking about developing, sort of these connections that go beyond, you know, the Morrissey fandom, and where else do we find these sites of convergences, these cultural transactions, if you will, between Mexico, Chicano, and Irish. And as my colleagues mentioned, once you're a Fulbright, you're always a Fulbright. Your family will always be there as long as you keep those connections alive. And I'm happy to say in the 5 years that I came home, I've continued to maintain these connections, working with the Office of the Fulbright on various projects around diversity, as well as colleagues at UL. So this was me literally on Monday the 7th. So that's why I'm a little still jet lagged. We came in on Wednesday. But my latest project is, I'm going back to my literary roots, and I'm looking at connections, Irish connections in Chicano and Chicano literature. This is a brand new project I just presented at the University of Limerick this past Monday with the very same colleagues who I worked at. So it's ongoing. It's a beautiful situation in my sense, and it will definitely be continued. This was me on Tuesday on the left, the day I was supposed to go visit everybody at the Fulbright, and it just didn't happen. I was just too busy eating tacos at the Tacos Los Chicanos food truck for, in fact, an article for the LA Taco, which will be coming out next week. So all of these, again, wonderful connections that keep kind of living and being recreated thanks to this research that I got to do in Ireland on the Fulbright. So that's my little spiel for now, and I'm happy to answer any questions from anybody about this work or about any of the kind of logistical questions that you might have. So I'll pass it on to my colleague, Lonnie, and there you have it.
Great. Thank you, Melissa.
I'm going to go
let me see.
sharing my screen real quick, I think. Hold on. How do I do this
Sure.
again? You think as if I haven't been teaching on Zoom for 3 years.
When that's all we've been doing. Okay, you should see my screen now. Is that correct? Okay, great. That was a smooth transition. Thanks, Melissa, again. Okay, so let's see. I was a Fulbrighter during fall semester in 2019. So it was right before the pandemic, and I concluded in December of 2019, came back to the United States, and then situation changed quite a bit here and then around the world. Let me advance this way. I think I can. There we go. All right. So I had gone over with Emma in terms of maybe some areas to focus on. Let me get my desktop a little better. So why did I choose Ireland? Well, everyone's different. Everyone has certain areas of expertise and where they want to go and where they feel they can contribute. In my particular case, I had gotten familiarity with Ireland through the course of a student competition. In my case, I'm in construction management. Many times that's in the field of civil engineering. In our case, it's in our College of Architecture. But this competition is hosted by an international organization. And because of that, there's a strong presence of European universities. And in particular, the venue site rotates over time. Well, through the course of bringing students from Cal Poly over to various venues in Europe, I met faculty through, it's Technical University, Dublin Technical Institute, or Dublin Technical University. I met faculty there, and we conversed in between competing with one another. And then at one occasion in particular, the event was hosted in Dublin. So I had an opportunity to see the university, to meet more with faculty, to engage more and discuss more. And that's effectively how the ball got rolling for me in terms of establishing a basis of contact, and also a reason for choosing Ireland in particular. And had a respect for the university and campus as a result of those competitions. And then later on, I started diving in online and again, talking with faculty, looking at their coursework and seeing that there was, areas where Cal Poly and the University in Dublin were aligned. I saw ways in which we could work together, and I can bring some of my work there. Now, I was on a teaching grant, and as such, the focus was going to be on coursework. And the coursework in particular that I wanted to bring over was managing a virtual construction company. It's prescient because we did nothing but work virtually for the 2 years after during COVID. But this particular program was very interesting for students who were engaged in construction activities, because you formed a team and you could work on a construction project in a virtual environment and bid jobs, work jobs through, and see all the different aspects of them. So it's very much a virtual representation of what the students competed in locally and then through these international competitions. And let me move on. So because of the contact that I had with Sonia Merkel at the university, I thought I could submit an application for being a Fulbrighter. I contacted her. We had discussions over distance, as well as there were conferences we occasionally popped up at together. And there was a lot of interaction. She provided guidance and feedback on my application, what areas of strength that I could emphasize that would align well and be favorably reviewed. And then I incorporated them in my application. I guess the key takeaway there is to work as much as possible with your host organization and faculty you might know, and leverage that with your work so that you can bring up your strong points in terms of, what, in my case, teaching I could lend towards things. So I had a great time living in Ireland. I was only there for 1 semester, but I tried to make the most of it. Let's see, Emma had asked if I could touch a little bit about living in Ireland. I'll just say that when I first started looking for lodging, a bit of a challenge. Dublin in particular is not that is expensive, relatively speaking, but and so my initial thought was, well, I'll just go to Airbnb, I'll find a listing, and I'll hook up at a listing for the entire duration. That didn't work out so well. So then I had a fallback course, and I said, it might actually be better not staying in just one place, because if you stay in multiple places, you can live in different areas of the city and you can see and experience different things. And that really worked out well for me. Dublin can be a bit diverse in terms of not the culture in particular, but also just in terms of the different neighborhoods. So by going and staying a month or two in different areas, I could really do a lot of walking tours, which Dublin's nice and compact. It lends itself quite well to just walking around and seeing everything. And I think I got a much better perspective by moving a bit and experiencing different areas of the city. In terms of impact of the scholarship, well, obviously, much better appreciation of Irish culture. Met many different faculty at the university and elsewhere in Ireland. And when I initially wanted to pursue a Fulbright, I was hoping to do a research scholar, research teaching model, but I could never in real time make anything work. So I submitted as a teaching only. But as it turns out, I got to work on research anyway. And you know how sometimes things just fall in line. While I was there, met another faculty. They were working on a grant through the Department of Education and Skills. And it was just perfectly aligned with both my background in construction management in general and my background in particular. And as it turned out, the faculty that they were going to have work on it at TU Dublin was unavailable. So they asked if I could pinch hit. And it was a great opportunity. The document, the research publication was published a few months after I left, but we had finished up everything primarily while I was there. It was just editorial from that point on. And even though the pandemic has greatly limited travel, for instance, that host organization of international competition has not held an event on site in the last 2, maybe 3 years now. We've connected virtually in many different ways and hope to again visit very soon. So thank you. All done, Emma.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So if you can stop, yeah, perfect. We'll just have a little bit of a chat because it's really interesting to learn more about your words. And I've talked to you about them, but each time there's something new, which is really great.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting, you were saying, Lonnie, especially about accommodations, obviously, you know, a concern for people. We did speak, Sonia and I were just speaking to some other US alum yesterday, and some of the advice was when you're reaching out to host institutions to see whether they have accommodation on site, you know, for staff, for faculty, for researchers. Of course, as well, you know, we have to highlight that it's not just higher education institutions you can go to. You can go to museums, galleries, and sometimes they have, you know, residents as well for visiting scholars or artists. So there are a few different options, but that you can explore. But I wanted to ask you both, I suppose, maybe to tease out a little bit about any tips you might have for application. One of the resources that seems to be very good for US scholars is the Scholar Liaison Network. And I'll share the link for that now. I think, Melissa, did you mention to me that you worked with the Scholar Liaison at your institution at the time?
I did, yeah. So when I was applying the first time, so this would have been around maybe 2014, 2015, when I had a position at Pitzer College in Claremont. And so Pitzer had a liaison, had a faculty Fulbright liaison at the time. And he was really useful as far as helping me to sort of answer just any initial questions, like, is my project Fulbright worthy? I'm writing about Morrissey fans, like, I'm not doing stem cell research, you know, I'm not doing like all these, like, I see STEM and I was like, you know, is this for me? I'm a fandom. And in fact, it was the Fulbright faculty liaison who was in political science at the time, but had just returned from his Fulbright in Germany working on football, soccer. So he says, absolutely, yes. In fact, a project like mine, because it's not STEMmy, it's not businessy, it's not policy, you know, any of these like sort of like hard serious thing. I'm not trying to solve the Brexit or the, you know, US border crisis kind of thing. But it's precisely because my project was very much in the realm of the cultural, of the soft power, right? And I'm using the words of the Mexican ambassador at that time, Carlos, who also explained about Mexico's soft power in Ireland. And so, and given that the Fulbright is all about cultural exchange, cultural transactions, all of these kinds of wonderful things around diversity and exchange, the cultural aspect of my project is according to the liaison, my faculty liaison at the time, lent itself well to a Fulbright project. And then it also helped that that I mentioned earlier, once you kind of start to find colleagues, and once you start to figure out who's on the other end working on the stuff with you, then I think that pathway becomes a lot more clear and opens up. a lot more. So I will say thank you to the Fulbright Liaison for being a really important kind of initial resource to just kind of get a sense like, is this something I can even apply for with the project I have? Once you kind of get the yes, absolutely, of course, then you just kind of go for it, right? And then you start to look for all of those connections and possible university, possible faculty, possible programs. Again, given my on the one hand, the interest in Morrissey, it made it even that easier to find people, especially when they were already doing things like symposiums at the UL campus on the topics I was writing about. So definitely helpful.
Thank you, Melissa. I wonder, I know there's definitely liaison officers at many of the CSU campus, but if there's not one at yours, perhaps you could reach out to one of the ones in the rest of the network and they might be able to assist you as well. Lonnie, did you find there was any support on campus, either from a liaison officer or the research department?
Yes, definitely. Let's see, I think we conversed through email about, we have an international programs office at Cal Poly, and they're also the office in terms of Fulbrighters, and one of the persons in that office, somewhat of a counterpart on that side, she and I have conversed in the past. She's a Fulbrighter as well, and they were of tremendous help in terms of structuring my application and also answering questions.
Excellent. Yeah, because there's a number of essays, of course, in the application. And
Yes.
Something I suppose to highlight is that the Fulbright ethos is really important part, understanding the Fulbright ethos and the idea of being an ambassador for your culture and coming to Ireland, sharing your information, and bringing what you learn back. There's lots of resources on the CIES website and also on our Fulbright.ie website. But how did you guys approach that in terms of the Fulbright ethos and how to demonstrate how you're a good fit?
Well, in my case, Cal Poly is fortunate that there are a number of different Fulbrighters on our campus. So the obvious was I reached out to them. And in fact, another faculty in our department was a Fulbrighter, and he and I spoke about that. He did a review of my application, and he essentially highlighted the fact that I was not addressing that so much in terms of, I was, being an engineer, I was focusing very much strongly in terms of the technical, and I wasn't giving that aspect of it nearly enough credit and visibility. So he cautioned me on that and provided some guidance. But anyway, that's how I engaged that.
Thanks, Lonnie, because that's really important. And it is, you can focus so much on your project that you can leave out that other element, which is so important to the Fulbright application. So do really take Lonnie's advice on that, please. And
Yeah,
Melissa, how was your experience? Oh yeah, sorry.
Can I just say it's so important, and it's an aspect of the application that we see both US and Irish scholars missing out on because they're used to writing funding research. That Fulbright aspect is imperative, and if you get to interview stage in Ireland, like your research is there because you've been technically reviewed, you hit the level, but we want to see what else you can bring. So it's imperative that you think about that Fulbright bit, and you think of Ireland not just, as I said, with your research, but all the other things that Ireland will give you when you get here. So apologies, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but it's just interesting that,
yeah, I would concur, because my interest in Ireland, I know I didn't really speak about it at the beginning, but I would say my interest goes back 30 years since I was an English major and I read Ulysses for the first time. And I know that can sound really trite and like cliche or whatever, but it's the absolute truth. And especially when I found connections to the Virgin Mary, Catholicism, other things that were legible to me as a Chicana, all of that I think was part of why, Ireland sort of presented itself to me as an option, or it just made sense to me 30 years later when I found myself doing this work on the fandom. But I think the ambassador thing is incredibly important, because when you land there, you're not just landing to do research. You're going to be part of a group of colleagues and other scholars who were also there. At least when we were there, I remember, y'all took us to UCC, for example, for an orientation. And then we spent Thanksgiving in Waterford. And so you really do get a sense of Ireland. You're not just sort of in your area, you're not just at your university, but part of being the Fulbright is to enjoy the expansive opportunities that the Fulbright gives us as ambassadors. And so we're first and foremost ambassadors. As someone who already kind of had a bit of love for Ireland anyway, and Irish culture, given the things I was studying, I think just landing there, I was happy. And it wasn't my first time landing in Ireland either. I had already visited Ireland three times before I landed for the Fulbright. So I was familiar with it already too. And I think that, you know, the time that I had to develop my project and to really think about the work I was doing beyond Morrissey, right? Where else can I find these connections to Ireland, right? As a Chicana, as a Mexican American, as a queer person, as an out lesbian. And all of that was part, I mean, I brought my whole self with me to Ireland. And they embraced my whole self. You know, it wasn't just the scholar part of me. I was embracing, oh, well, you're a queer Chicana, good luck then. I really did feel like even I could be in Ireland and feel good and feel like I had something to contribute and feel like I was legitimately there for a true exchange of culture. And that's important. And it remains one of the more important aspects of the Fulbright for me as an alum now, right? Because that's never going to go away, right? You're always a kind of ambassador. You're always sort of, you know, interested and invested in these cross-cultural connections that are so important and that really do define this experience.
I noticed one of the chats there, Melissa, I don't know if you want to comment, I'll lead, but a question was asked about, do you have to be on sabbatical to do a Fulbright? In my particular case, I mean, the short answer is no, you don't have to, obviously. In my particular case, I did try to align it and I was successful. So I went on my Fulbright and I was also on sabbatical at the same time. But the two are, it's great if you can align them, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
Melissa, were you on you weren't?
In fact, I was unemployed, to be honest. Pitzer College ended my tenure track contract, and you know, I applied. I want to say I applied but perhaps as an independent scholar at the time. I think that's what I put in my application, in fact, because Pitzer didn't want me no more, and I was like, well, too bad. I took my funding and everything that they gave me at the time. But once they cut me loose, by the time I applied the second time to the Fulbright, I was homeless. I didn't have an institutional affiliation. I applied as an independent scholar. So that's another thing, you know, I had the doctorate, obviously I had my research lined up, I had the institutional stuff lined up, but I didn't have the job here in the States. And so that freed me, in fact, the Fulbright was the only thing I had that year after Pitzer essentially fired me, okay? So thank goddesses for that. You know, I thank St. Bridget for that, because that Ireland, you know, Fulbright that year was my one thing that I had. And so as an independent scholar, I went, and with no affiliation whatsoever. And that's in that way, I belonged to UL. You know, I had a UL email, I had a bank account, everything. You know, I lived on UL campus. I actually lived in a faculty residence area there.
Nice.
So UL was my affiliation, in fact, for the semester, the 6 months I was there.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different options. So in terms of how you'll arrange it with your own university, with your own campus, maybe check in with the research and development departments and talk to alumni, as both as Lonnie and Melissa have said, because, you know, you'll get their kind of input on how they arranged it. Because, you know, if there are alum on campus, then it's been done before, you know, so it's worth investigating for sure. Okay, great. Then in terms of, I suppose, cultural observations, you know, you might have had expectations of Ireland before you, and Irish people maybe before you came. Was there any surprises? Was there anything, you know, that you didn't expect, I suppose, or anything that you particularly enjoyed?
Well, like I said, when I landed there for the Fulbright, it was not my first time to Ireland. So I felt I already had a sense of what to expect and how to get around. I spent most of my time in Dublin and driving around with my parents, of all things. So that this time around, I felt like I knew what to expect. I think what surprised me, though, was because now that I was living in Limerick and living in a totally different part of the country, really understanding the regional, how super and hyper regional folks are there, right? People in Limerick making fun of people's Cork accents, for example, right? And everybody making fun of Dublin is Emma would know, nobody liking Dublin. So, those sort of more specific kind of super local, regional, what loyalties, claims were really fun, and also reminded me a lot of the neighborhoods here in LA, right? Like this notion, for example, of, I happen to be born and raised East Side oriented, East LA, Montebello, East LA, Whittier. And so it reminded me for, the way that we might talk about West Siders, or the way that LA people might talk about people in the Bay Area, right? So it's all kind of part of being a big, related family. But the other thing I felt was really, that still kind of strikes me and that I appreciate was actually the bilingualism, to be honest. To see all the signs in 2 languages, and the fact that the Irish language was prioritized, those of us from the borderland, and, I dream of that day happening here, where I see Spanish and English, next to each other, and it's not a big deal. I know it's highly political here, as it is there, but that, I think, teaches us something here in the States about how that is possible, and how something like a bilingual system can actually happen. And so I continue to be reminded about that, and impressed, and also just really happy that I got a chance to live in a country where there are more than 1 languages that are honored and that are considered official.
In my particular case, somewhat similar. I guess the way I'd say it is that when you live in a country and you travel to another country, I think it's a natural tendency to assume everything's monolithic, that there is a singular culture, and that, things follow in very homogeneous type of a fashion. And like Melissa mentioned, and we've all experienced through our other travels, is there are so many different regions, so many different subcultures and different aspects. I was somewhat similar in that I'd visited the university. And one thing I want to mention for those of you who are applying in Dublin is that when I was there, the university was located on Bolton Street, and I know they were building another campus, and perhaps one of Emma, you might want to mention that it's a beautiful new campus. I'm not sure if they've, pardon me, moved over entirely or not, but I was fortunate that I'd been to the university through a past student competition and knew about it, and it was just fun exploring and seeing the different cultures.
Really is.
Grange Gorman is the new campus for Technological University Dublin. So it's in a very kind of historical area, but it very modern buildings and things like that. So you'll find as well with a lot of the universities, they could be very old, but then they'll have the kind of modern aspect as well. I know University of Limerick is beautiful as well. Melissa, got the river running through it, and just like to live on campus there, I'd say was amazing as well.
The River Shannon was my backyard, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. And in fact, Owen, when I was there a few days ago, drove me around to see all my old haunts, and it all came rushing back to me really beautifully. And the fact that I was able to live on campus, I think really helped and made a big difference for me to get acclimated to the campus. It is a bigger campus in the fact that it spans the river. So you have a good part of the campus on the south end. And then you cross the beautiful living bridge, you cross the River Shannon, and then you have the World Music Academy and some of the other sports complexes there. The thing about UL, though, that it is 5 miles, at least like 5 kilometers from the city center. So that, I know like, Dublin, TCU, a lot of places, they're sort of right smack in the middle of the city center. UL, we're a little outside of it. And so I did get a sense of the kind of suburban feel, the kind of college town feel with the suburbs of the university. And then if I wanted to go in the city, I'd have to take a bus or something to get into the city center, which was its whole other. Limerick is laid out a little differently because unlike some of the other cities like Dublin, they're old European cities and the streets kind of are circular and then go every which way. Limerick City is founded on a grid. So streets actually went, north, east, west, and it was also really lend itself to walking in the way that Dublin did, but walking in a way that made sense to me coming from a place like LA that's also on a grid. So I felt like I was able to find my way around a little bit better. But it was a nice experience to be able to kind of see 2 parts of Limerick, right? The university part, living on campus. And then when I wanted to hang out, to go into the city. What I loved about Limerick and the university is how easy it was to get to anywhere else in Ireland you wanted to go. There's a bus to Dublin, boom, that stops right on campus and right in front of the pub. That takes you to Dublin in 2.5 hours. You can go to Ennis this way. You can go down to Adair in Cork. You can go up to Galway. So, and I took advantage of that, you know, like kind of what Lonnie was saying. Once you're on the ground, you know, you're going to have plenty to do with your work, but you have to make time to explore because you're there at the end of the day to be a cultural ambassador and to take it in. So Ireland, I found very easy to get around. Easy to take a train, easy to take a bus, and it's highly encouraged to do so because you just see so much more when you're, you know, traveling on a bus. I remember taking the bus from Limerick to Waterford, in fact, for Thanksgiving, and just seeing a whole part of Southern Ireland that I never would have seen if I was just, you know, taking a train from Dublin over or something like that. So highly encouraged to use the ground transportation for little day trips or weekend trips.
I would say is like all of our cities are quite compact, so great for walking around. Bus services are good in terms of, especially for campus as well. You know, there will generally be a stop right outside campus, bringing you to back to Dublin at least, and Cork, through Limerick, and then up to Galway as well. So there's lots of ways to get around, I suppose, comparatively to America as well, to the USA. It's very small, so you can, you know, do a tour bus to the other side of the country in a day, half a day, you know, and really see everything in a short space of time. Yeah, and there is the county rivalry, mostly sports related, some historical kind of related stuff as well, obviously, but it's all a bit of fun, which I hope for the most part, as a Dublin person who sometimes, yeah, we get a bit of stick because as being the capital, I suppose, but there are so many beautiful places to visit, both in Dublin but outside Dublin, you know, across the country, all over the island as well, you know, Donegal and Northern Ireland. Somebody did actually just ask about whether you guys had done an inter-country award, and those ones are, you can visit other countries within Europe for a short stint while you're on your award to Ireland. So neither of you did that while you were here. I know lots of our alum have done that. So you can do that through the inter-country awards, but also a lot of our U.S. Scholar Awards would just organize independently trips to the continent, you know, for holiday or to work with other colleagues as well that they've either met through their Irish collaborators or that they already had contact with or just wanted to make new contact with. So that, you know, everything is quite easy in terms of travel. Obviously the last couple of years haven't been the same, but now that everything's open back up again, you know, there's flights to all the European cities very regularly. So that's definitely a draw as well, I suppose. And okay, so the last thing I suppose I was going to ask you is in terms of your ongoing collaborations. We just have a few more minutes, just in terms of the connections you made and whether you keep them up. I know you touched on this a bit in your presentations, but I suppose what are the highlights of that going forward?
Well, for me, I think I know on the slide that I showed you all, I'm absolutely in touch with my colleagues. They're on my WhatsApp and we talk pretty. And the collaborations I see coming forward from here are likely going to be more in the realm of music and culture, like I mentioned, tacos in particular, and Mexican food in Dublin in particular. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, so, you know, I found my UL colleagues, but there was another colleague I found at Maynooth University who I actually found through the Fulbright alumni. And here was an Irish woman who went to University of California, Santa Barbara, Chicana Studies program. And she was probably the first person I found before my UL colleagues, simply for the fact that she was an Irish woman studying Chicana literature and came to UCSB on the Fulbright. And she's now at Maynooth. And so she is somebody that I am in contact with for future work. We're both interested in literature and film. And so I imagine that she and I are going to be doing some form of collaborative work around Chicana literature. There's a woman, there's a writer, her name is Reina Grande, Chicana writer, whose newest book that comes out in 10 days is about the San Patricios. So I know that Catherine and I, that's her name, Catherine Lean at the University of Maynooth University, definitely the collaborations around some of this new literature that's coming out, and also around the Mexican food scene in Ireland. So brand new stuff, and with another colleague that I found through the Fulbright network. So totally useful in that way. I encourage everybody to look for those alumni, and because that's exactly how I found someone who works on Chicano studies in Dublin.
In my case, some of the faculty who collaborated on the past research grant work, we've committed to look at other expanded opportunities to align more broadly CSU, but also back to TU Dublin in terms of continuing some work. So there should be some opportunities there. And then interestingly enough, in regards to the question in particular, I didn't take advantage per se on anything related to Fulbright and inter-country awards. But while I was there, in Ireland, I also wanted to pursue opportunities from more a student perspective, in the sense that a number of our students will have internships, summer opportunities, and we try to foster as much diversity as possible. So the students usually will find summer jobs right in their local area, but I try to bring international perspective into say, hey, did you ever think about any other companies that maybe have international offices? And so I leveraged my time while I was there to visit some companies in the UK and Ireland in the areas of who engage in the areas of construction, with the goal of seeing if there was any alignment for a potential employment opportunities for our students.
Thanks, that's great. And actually, you brought perfectly on to students. If any of you are interested in recommending Fulbright Student Awards to your own students there on campus, we do have a webinar coming up. I'm sharing the link for it now. There's coming up on 5th of April, so the student webinar. So we'll have something similar to this. The student awards only open at the start of April, so that's why they're a little bit later. But please do encourage them to attend. But we've just hit the hour, so I know you guys are only starting your day now, so I want to let you get back to work. But I'd like to thank both Lonnie and Melissa so much for helping to organizing this event, and also for sharing all their experiences with us. I think it's really encouraging to come to Ireland, listening to their stories, and I hope that we will hear from many of you again and work with you over the next year through your application. Just once more, if you want to register your interest, you go with CIES.org. And then if you want Ireland specific events, our website is www.fulbright.ie. And any questions, feel free to get in touch with us. So thank you to everyone who's joined today for listening. And thanks again to Lonnie, Melissa, and to Carl in CSU who helped us too.
Okay.
See you soon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Well.
Bye.